It was a crisp autumn morning in Burlington, Vermont, the kind where the maple trees outside the window glowed in shades of red and gold, and the air carried that faint scent of wood smoke from distant chimneys. Inside a small, weathered house on the edge of town, Grace stood at the stove, her faded housecoat brushing softly against her knees. The kettle whistled as steam curled into the air, and the rich aroma of coffee spread through the kitchen. Owen walked in, already dressed for work. His shirt was perfectly pressed, his shoes gleamed, and his phone never left his hand. Without so much as glancing up from the screen, he muttered, "Still standing there? Maybe try doing something useful for once." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut deep, sharp, and deliberate. Grace didn't answer. Her chest tightened as the words sank in, another blow to a spirit already bruised by years of contempt. Lazy. That was his favorite insult, the word he used to shrink her into something small. He never saw the quiet labor behind every clean room, every packed lunch, every night spent soothing their kids after a bad dream. To Owen, she was invisible, a woman who had never done anything with her life. When he left, the house fell silent. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint laughter of her children, Jack and Sophie, playing in the living room. Grace washed the dishes, folded the laundry, and swept the kitchen floor in a kind of trance. The TV murmured softly in the background, not for company, but to drown out the quiet. Every time she caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. "Maybe he's right," she whispered. "Maybe I really am lazy." That thought lingered, corrosive and cruel, eating away at her confidence one day at a time. Then, one chilly afternoon, something shifted. Her friend Emma stopped by for coffee, her laughter warm and familiar. They sat at the small table by the window, steam rising from their mugs. Emma noticed the heaviness in Grace's eyes. "Have you ever thought about doing something just for you?" she asked gently, yet directly. Grace hesitated. "How could I? Owen would never understand. He thinks I can't even handle a simple class, let alone a job." She tried to smile, but her voice trembled. Emma reached across the table, her hand firm on Grace's. "That's what he thinks," she said softly. "But what do you think? You are so much more than what he sees. Don't let him decide who you get to be." Those words followed her long after Emma left, echoing in the quiet rooms like a promise she'd almost forgotten how to believe in. That night, while Owen snored beside her, Grace lay awake. The glow of her phone lit the dark room as she scrolled mindlessly until an ad caught her eye: free online course, digital marketing for beginners. Her heart fluttered. Could I really do this? It was just a whisper, but it carried hope. The next morning, as she poured Owen's coffee, he glanced up briefly and sneered, "Still in your pajamas? Do something with your life, Grace." She took a deep breath. His words still hurt, but this time something inside her resisted. "I will," she thought silently. "But not for you, for me." From that day on, her nights became her secret. After Owen drifted into sleep, Grace would quietly rise, slip on her headphones, and open her old laptop. The soft blue light from the screen filled the kitchen like a private lantern. She watched tutorials, joined webinars, and typed notes furiously, afraid that if she paused, the courage might fade. One evening, her instructor typed in the chat, "You've got talent, Grace." She froze. A simple message, but it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time in years, someone saw her potential. That small acknowledgement lit something inside her: belief. By day, she still played her part, the dutiful wife, the attentive mother. Owen continued his cruel remarks, dropping them like stones. "Are you ever going to make lunch, or just sit around all day?" he'd scoff, collapsing on the couch. Grace no longer let it sink in. She'd smile faintly, thinking of the world she was quietly building when he wasn't looking. "You'll never understand," she thought. "I'm creating something you can't destroy." Weeks passed, and she began connecting with classmates in the online community. They shared tips, struggles, and encouragement late into the night. One student, Michael, stood out, kind, patient, always willing to help her through the harder lessons. "You've got a real gift for this," he once wrote. "I see a bright future ahead for you." It was strange. Someone she'd never met believed in her more than the man she shared a bed with. Each small win became a hidden treasure, completing an assignment, receiving praise, or learning something new. But secrecy came with fear. What if Owen found out? What if he laughed, or worse, forbade her from continuing? Yet she pressed on. Every class finished, every message exchanged, became an act of quiet rebellion. "You've been awfully quiet lately," Owen said one evening, suspicion in his eyes. "Hope you're not chasing another one of your little dreams." Grace kept her gaze steady on her plate, her heart pounding. But this time fear didn't own her. Courage did. One night, as the kids slept and Owen's snores filled the dark, Grace checked her email and gasped. Payment received. Her first freelance project, approved. The amount was small, barely enough for a week's groceries, but it was hers. Every cent was proof that her effort mattered, that she was capable, that she could stand on her own. The following months brought more small payments, tiny deposits that shimmered with meaning. Each one carried something Owen could never give her: dignity. She didn't tell him. She didn't need to. Her victories were quiet but powerful, each one a step toward the woman she was meant to be. Jack and Sophie, though young, sensed the change in their mother. Her eyes had more light, her laughter came easier. They didn't understand everything that was happening, but they could feel it. Their mom was coming back to life. And in the soft glow of her laptop each night, Grace kept learning, dreaming, and building. The chains that once bound her were breaking, not all at once, but piece by piece, replaced by something stronger than fear. Hope. It was just past 6 in the evening, the golden hour when the fading light spilled through the kitchen window and painted the countertops in shades of amber. The scent of roasted chicken and rosemary drifted through the air as Grace moved methodically around the stove, the rhythmic sound of her knife against the cutting board filling the quiet house. Jack sat at the kitchen table, coloring a map of New England for a school project, while Sophie hummed softly to herself in the living room, building towers out of mismatched blocks. Then came the question that stopped Grace cold. "Mom," Jack said quietly, not looking up from his crayons, "why doesn't Dad ever listen to you? He's always mad." The knife trembled in her hand mid-cut. She stared down at the pile of half-sliced carrots, her vision blurring for a moment. How could she explain to her 9-year-old the complexity of a love that had turned into control, of respect that had long vanished, leaving only resentment in its wake? She set the knife down carefully and turned toward him with a soft smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sometimes, sweetheart," she said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead, "people lose their way. But I'm here. I'll always take care of you and your sister. Always." Jack studied her face as if trying to understand more than her words could say. Finally, he nodded. That was enough for him for now. But as she watched his small, trusting face, Grace felt the full weight of her secret settle over her shoulders. This isn't just about me anymore, she thought. Everything I'm building is for them, for a future where they'll never see what I've endured. Meanwhile, Owen continued his routine as though nothing had changed. He left early for work, came home late, and carried the same air of superiority that filled every room before he even spoke. He had no idea that in the quiet hours after he fell asleep, Grace was building something remarkable. A growing list of clients, a budding career in digital marketing, and a confidence that no longer needed his validation. Each new email brought her closer to freedom. Accepted, approved, let's work together again. Her client list expanded, and with every small victory, another piece of her self-worth returned. But progress carried tension. Grace knew it was only a matter of time before Owen noticed. The confrontation loomed over her like a storm on the horizon. She could already hear his voice, sharp and dismissive. "Grace, when will you understand? Money doesn't fall from the sky. While I'm out there working for real, you're here wasting time on nonsense." Those words used to crush her, but not anymore. Now, they barely scratched the surface of who she'd become. Still, late at night, when the house was quiet, fear would whisper, "Will he support me? Or try to tear me down again?" That question haunted her as she tucked the kids into bed one night. Owen had barely spoken to her all evening, glued to his phone and the flicker of the television. After cleaning the kitchen, Grace slipped into the small spare room she had turned into her office. It wasn't much, just a thrifted desk, her old laptop, and a half-empty mug of coffee, but to her it was sacred ground. When she opened her inbox that night, her eyes welled with tears. Messages filled the screen. "Your campaign boosted our numbers. Thank you. You're incredibly talented, Grace. I'd love to collaborate again." She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I'm doing it," she whispered. "I'm actually doing it." Then another message appeared, from Michael, her classmate from the online course. "Michael, Grace, your project is brilliant. You should promote your work more. You're ready for the next step." Ready. The word lingered. She wasn't sure she believed it fully, but it stirred something inside her. She looked toward the children's room, listening to their even breathing through the thin wall. "Maybe I'm ready," she thought. Not to fight, but to stop hiding. The next evening, the air in the house felt different. Heavy. Charged. Owen sat in the living room with the news murmuring in the background, his attention split between the TV and his phone. Grace stood in the hallway, her hands trembling slightly. She had replayed this moment in her mind 100 times. It was time. She closed her laptop, took a deep breath, and walked into the room. "Owen," she said evenly, "we need to talk." He groaned, not bothering to look up. "Now what?" "I already washed the dishes." "What more do you want, Grace?" She paused for a moment, steadying her voice. This time, her silence wasn't fear. It was resolve. "I've started a business," she said calmly. "And it's working. I'm making money." That got his attention. He blinked, confusion flickering across his face before dissolving into a mocking laugh. "A business? Doing what? You don't know anything about business, you don't even work." Grace met his eyes without flinching. "I do now. Every day while you're gone, I've been studying. Taking courses. Learning digital marketing. I've built something real, Owen, and I'm earning more than you think." The silence that followed was electric. For once, Grace wasn't the one shrinking. Owen stood abruptly, his face darkening. "You're delusional. You think you did this all on your own? You only had the time because I work. If it weren't for me, if I didn't pay for this house, you wouldn't have been able to do any of it." Grace's voice remained steady, her words cutting through his like wind through glass. "You really believe that, don't you? That everything I've accomplished exists because of you? The truth is, Owen, I did it in spite of you. Every late night, every lesson, every small victory, I earned it while you were sleeping." His mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time in years, he was speechless. "This is a joke," he muttered finally, pacing like a trapped animal. "You won't last a week without me. You need me." Grace's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I've been without you for months, Owen. The only difference is I don't have to hide it anymore." Just then, the front door opened. Her mother, Tiffany, stepped inside, followed by her lifelong friend Megan. Both women had sensed this day was coming. Tiffany's presence filled the room with quiet strength, while Megan, never one to hold back, stood ready with fierce loyalty in her eyes. Owen groaned, rolling his eyes. "Oh great. You brought an audience for your big performance." Megan stepped forward, her tone sharp and unwavering. "She doesn't need an audience, Owen. She just needed freedom. And now that she's found it, it's your turn to step aside." Owen's jaw tightened. His anger had nowhere to go now, cornered by truth and the quiet certainty in Grace's voice. Tiffany looked at her daughter, pride glimmering in her eyes. "You've always been stronger than you realized, sweetheart," she said softly. "And now you're finally showing it." Grace felt the tears rise, but they weren't tears of pain anymore. They were release. For years she had carried the weight of silence, but tonight, standing there in the fading Vermont light, she let it fall away. The balance had shifted. For once, it wasn't Owen's anger that filled the room, it was Grace's strength. And there was no going back. The morning air carried that crisp October chill that made every breath feel like a quiet promise of change. The leaves outside Grace's window glowed in shades of amber and rust, swirling across the yard with each gust of wind. Inside, the house was still, heavy with silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Peaceful. Hopeful. Grace stood in front of the mirror, watching her reflection as if she were meeting herself for the first time. The woman staring back wasn't the same one from yesterday. Her eyes no longer looked tired or dimmed by years of compromise. There was something steadier in them now, something alive. The night before, she had finally done what she'd been postponing for years. She'd left Owen. The quiet of the house no longer frightened her. The empty spaces that used to echo with arguments and disappointment now felt full of possibility. The air even smelled different. Freshly brewed coffee mingled with the faint scent of rain that lingered from the night before. Her children came down the hallway, their footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. Jack, her oldest at 12, looked serious, his brows knit in worry. Sophie, still in her pajamas, rubbed the sleep from her eyes and clutched her worn-out teddy bear. Jack slid into a chair at the kitchen table, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, what's gonna happen to us now?" Grace set 2 mugs on the counter, her hands steady for the first time in years. She turned to face him, her voice firm yet gentle. "Now, son, we start living for real. I know this hasn't been easy for you or your sister, but I promise we're going to be okay." Sophie looked up, her small voice breaking the silence. "Daddy's not coming back, is he?" Grace knelt beside her, pulling her daughter close. Tears filled her eyes, but they were different this time. Not the tears of a woman defeated, but of someone finally free. "No, sweetheart. He's not coming back. But that doesn't mean we can't be happy. We're going to build something new, together." From across the table, Jack managed a faint smile. He'd seen his mother struggle for so long, and now, for the first time, he could see her strength shining through. That afternoon, Grace gathered her parents and closest friends in her living room. The space was cozy, with soft light spilling through the curtains and the scent of cinnamon tea filling the air. Everyone sensed that something big was coming, though none of them could quite guess what. Her father, Charles, sat quietly in his favorite armchair, his posture straight but his eyes warm with pride. Tiffany, her mother, leaned forward on the couch, her fingers twisting a tissue she hadn't yet needed. Grace took a deep breath. "Dad, Mom, everyone. I made a decision. I moved out. I left Owen. From now on, I'm moving forward on my own." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the low hum of the heater. Then the shock melted into admiration. Her father's expression softened. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Tiffany reached for her daughter's hand. "I knew this day would come. You've always been stronger than you thought, Grace. I'm so proud of you." Ryan, a close friend from college, leaned forward, concern etched across his face. "But what about Jack and Sophie? Running your business while raising 2 kids. It's a lot. You know it won't be easy." Grace smiled, not defensively, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had finally found her footing. "I'm not alone, Ryan. I have all of you, and I have myself. That's enough. I've worked hard, faced my fears, and learned who I am. I don't need Owen's approval to know my worth." As if on cue, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She picked it up and stared at the screen. An email from Horizon Creative Agency, a company she'd admired for years. They wanted to collaborate with her small design studio. Her eyes lit up. "See this," she said, showing the message. "This is just the beginning." Applause and laughter filled the room. Megan, her best friend, wrapped her in a hug, whispering, "You did it, Grace." That night, long after everyone had gone, Grace sat on the edge of her bed with an old photo album resting on her lap. Between faded pictures and wedding snapshots, she found one of herself at 22, smiling, full of fire, unafraid. She traced her younger face with her fingertip, realizing that spark had never really disappeared. It had only been buried under years of fear and compromise. Now it was burning bright again. She closed the album and looked out the window. The city lights shimmered against the dark sky, and for the first time in a long while, the horizon didn't scare her. It inspired her. "I did it," she whispered, smiling through quiet tears. As she lay down, the warmth of peace settled in her chest. Life wouldn't be perfect, she knew that. But it would be hers. Every challenge ahead felt like proof that she had chosen herself. Freedom had a price, but it was worth every sacrifice. Because sometimes, life convinces us that change is impossible, that we're trapped by our past or defined by what others expect. But the truth is, The courage to start again has always been within us. When we take control of our own story, we don't just find a new path, we rediscover our strength. Real happiness begins when you stop living for permission and start living for truth. In the end, rewriting your story isn't about running away. It's about bravery, growth, and the unshakable decision to live life on your own terms. You just heard this one from Stories by Sue. If it resonated, don't forget to like and subscribe. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments, I'd love to hear. Thanks for watching.